have low vision or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by USA Today. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today. Today, for Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. Your reader for the first hour is Alan Blackburn. Fall forecast calls for a summer extension. The El Nino is the dominant driver of weather patterns. The nation's scorching summer, which featured the hottest July on record, is almost in the rearview mirror, and attention now turns to the season of pumpkin spice, falling leaves, and hopefully mercifully cooler temperatures. However, this year it may take longer than usual for the summer warmth to fade, in part due to El Nino strengthening, according to a new federal forecast and commentary from AccuWeather meteorologist Brian Leda. The Climate Prediction Center fall temperature outlook map for the United States shows that nearly coast-to-coast above average temperatures are expected in September through November, except for a spot in the Ohio Valley where there are equal chances for above and below average temperatures. The September, October, November 2026 temperature outlook favors above normal temperatures for most of Alaska as well as the western and central contiguous United States, the Great Lakes, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Florida, and coastal areas of the Southeastern Gulf. The National Oceanic Administration Climate Prediction Center lead meteorologist Scott Handel wrote on an online forecast released on August 20th. Later in an online forecast of AccuWeather said in September may feel more like the extension of the summer across parts of the country, especially in the mid-Atlantic and southeastern United States, where the above-average temperatures will be paired with high humidity and warm nights. In a bit of good news for fall weather lovers, cold snaps are still possible amid warmer than average temperatures. Experts say that El Nino will likely be the dominant driver of weather across the United States this fall. Because the strong signal will be very strong, the confidence level is good that El Nino will drive a majority of the weather features across the nation this fall and winter, according to email to USA Today from AccuWeather meteorologist Paul Pastelak. Overall, the main headlines for fall weather are that the very strong El Nino will bring rain relief to the southern tier of the nation, while wildfires continue to burn into early fall in the northwest. Also keep in mind that fall has two different starting dates. Meteorological fall starts on September 1st, while astronomical fall, which takes place at the autumnal equinox, begins at 8:05 Eastern Time on September 22nd. The outlook from the Climate Prediction Center covers the months of September, October, and November. Specifically, the highest probabilities of above normal temperatures are forecast across southeastern Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, the northern Rockies, and adjacent areas of the northern high plains and northwestern Colorado. The temperature outlook also features areas of equal chances across the Ohio and Tennessee valleys and nearby areas, where warm trends are relatively weak compared to other areas of the country. The fall precipitation forecast map for the United States shows that drier than average conditions are expected in parts of the northwest and northeast, while the southwest and southeast should be wetter than average. The greatest chances for above normal precipitation are indicated for much of the southwest and adjacent areas of the Great Basin and central and southern Rockies, as well as for parts of the coastal southeast. Democrats see a blessing in Trump's tax law. Maryland Governor Wes Moore warned last year that everyone besides the super rich is getting hosed by President Donald Trump's signature One Big Beautiful Bill. But 1 year later, the Democratic governor is touting one piece of the massive tax and spending law. Moore announced his state's new efforts in August to expand health care access to rural Marylanders, declaring Marylanders' ability to access affordable and quality health care should not depend on their zip code. The undertaking is funded by $168 million in federal money Maryland received this year from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The law, which was passed with only Republican votes in Congress, created a 5-year, $50 billion rural health transformation program, dangling federal monies to states to boost health care services in rural areas. Maryland is using an initial $80 million from its tranche to expand access to primary care, mental care services, and dental services in rural parts of the state. The $80 million allocation is another step in our administration's commitment to investing and expanding innovative initiatives to drive healthcare outcomes for Maryland's rural communities, leaving no one behind, Moore said in a statement on August 10th. Without mentioning the money came from the law that's the centerpiece of Trump's economic agenda. Like Democrats on Capitol Hill, Democrat Governor fiercely opposed Trump's One Big Beautiful bill. They slammed it for extending the tax cuts, allowing pandemic-enhanced Obamacare health premiums to expire, and establishing new work eligibility requirements for Medicaid that are expected to force 7.8 million more people off health insurance by 2034. The inclusion of $50 billion for rural health care in Trump's mega bill helped ease concerns for some Republican lawmakers about the cuts to Medicaid and anticipated reduction of $911 billion over 10 years and its potential impact on Democratic governors, on rural hospitals. Democratic governors still say, will you turn the page here? Still say the infusion of cash rural health won't soften the expected blow from Medicare overhaul, particularly when the new work requirements begin in 2027. But that hasn't stopped them from promoting the money that has flowed into their states, while steering clear from praising Trump that created the program. This investment allows Hawaii to finally close the distance between rural communities and the care they deserve. Hawaii Governor Josh Green, a Democrat, said earlier this year. Green had issued a dire warning when the bill was passed in July 2025. These next 2 years won't be easy, but we are mobilizing now to respond to protect our people and make sure Hawaii can weather what's coming. Connecticut Democratic Governor Len Lamont said in March, hailed the $150 million the state is receiving. Will the Medicaid cuts outweigh laws benefiting rural areas? Medicaid covers 16 million people in rural areas. According to KFF, an independent healthcare research organization, an analysis found Medicaid spending is expected to decline by $137 billion in rural areas because of the mega bill, meaning the $50 billion in rural healthcare funding offsets only about a third of the loss. States with large rural populations that expanded Medicare under the Obama-era Affordable Care Act are expected to see the largest decreases in Medicare spending. Governors accept the money but stand by their opposition. Colorado, led by Democratic Jared Polis, issued a request in June for applications from organizations to help carry out its rural health care plan. By taking care of every opportunity to reduce health care costs and support rural communities, Colorado can increase access to care we need to thrive. But a spokesman for Polis reiterated in the statement the government's opposition to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, saying it does significant harm through cuts to food stamp assistance, reduction to Medicaid by allowing the enhanced ACA subsidies to expire. It also ripped an immediate $1 billion hole in our state budget. Mariama said, Congress never lets pass the law, and Colorado will not leave federal funding on the table, especially given the enormity of the cuts to services the law creates. Parents detained, leaving us all alone. An 18-year-old daughter is now in charge of 4 siblings in Florida. Federal immigration authorities in Florida detained a Lake Worth Beach couple on August 9th as their family of 7 drove away from church. They were on their way to buy shoes for their 4 youngest children before school resumed the following day. The 5 U.S.-born children of Maria Leiva and Abraham Domingo sobbed as Border Patrol agents detained their parents, who are undocumented immigrants from Guatemala, after stopping their minivan. The Domingo family, which has lived in the United States for nearly 20 years, recorded the encounter on a video that has been shared widely across social media. It shows the children showing age 3 to 18 crying and hugging as their parents are led away. I always feared my dad would get taken going are coming home from work, Wendy Domingo, the couple's eldest child, said August 12th at the Guatemalan Maya Center in Lake Worth Beach. She had turned 18 the day before her parents' detention. I never thought both my parents would get taken away at the same time, leaving me in charge of my 4 siblings, leaving us all alone. In response to criticism surrounding the arrest, the Department of Homeland Security defended its actions on a post on social media platform X. The agency said Leiva had an order of removal and Abraham Domingo had a domestic battery charge on their records. A review of Palm Beach County, Florida court records shows Domingo was arrested 4 times for different offenses, but in each case his attorney negotiated deals with prosecutors to avoid formal convictions or had the charges dropped. These illegal alien parents willingly chose to break our nation's laws, and as a result of those choices, to their children, just as any U.S. citizen patient who breaks the law is when they are taken to jail. Since August 9th, Domingo, a plumber and electrician, Leiva, who managed her family's home, have been held in separate detention facilities in Broward County, unable to see each other or their children. The couple plans to deport themselves to Guatemala. Domingo and Leiva fled Guatemala and built their lives in Lake Worth Beach, where they raised their 5 U.S. children. Domingo took jobs across Palm Beach County, and the family attended church every Sunday, usually filling an entire pew. Wendy, the 18-year-old, was driving their van when the Border Patrol's agents pulled it over. She said her father, who was in the passenger seat, grabbed his phone and called his mother. Her siblings, sitting in the back, seemed terrified, and her mother began praying. The family rarely traveled together, making exceptions only for church and special occasions. This year, immigration agents had detained 2 of Wendy's aunts and a cousin. As soon as I saw their immigration, I knew it was over for us, Wendy recalled, thinking, they're going to take my parents. A Border Patrol agent approached and asked for identification from everyone in the vehicle, Wendy said. At that moment, Abraham began recording the encounter with his cell phone. Wendy said she asked the agent why he pulled them over. In the video, the agent is heard saying he ran the van's license plate and found it was registered to Abraham Domingo, who is not a U.S. citizen. I did nothing wrong to be getting pulled over, Wendy said. My parents were just passengers. What did they do wrong? The agent asked if Leiva and Domingo had documentation to prove they were in the country legally. Wendy said they did not, and the agent ordered them out of the vehicle. Abraham's cell phone captured his children wailing and calling Mommy and Poppy. The children took turns hugging their parents, their tears soaking their shirts. Wendy wrapped her arms around her father in a long embrace. She asked, "Why didn't you send only me? Why did we all have to be together?" From the back of the patrol vehicle, the parents watched their children crying as the vehicle drove away. Jeffrey DeVore, an immigration attorney based in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, said previous administrations generally did not detain undocumented immigrants who were passengers during routine traffic stops. He said that since President Donald Trump returned to office in 2025, he's seen an increase in cases where federal agents identify undocumented immigrants through vehicle records and arrest them during traffic stops. Prior to the Trump administration, immigration really wasn't a traffic issue. Border Patrol's job is not to enforce traffic laws, so why are they running license plates? Isn't this a sort of a situation of driving while brown? DeVore said Trump's immigration crackdown has led to the arrest of people without violent crime offenses, leaving families fractured and children without parents. The Trump administration said they were focusing on the worst of the worst, and that is clearly not what they are doing. Wendy said her parents' detention has left the family traumatized and uncertain about how they will make ends meet. She is now responsible at age 18 for feeding, clothing, and caring for her 4 younger siblings aged 16, 14, 11, and 3. She said she had postponed her plans to attend Palm Beach State College this fall and instead will work 2 jobs, one as a restaurant server and another at a hotel front desk to help pay rent and household bills. It's going to be really, really hard to learn to live without my parents' help, Wendy said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Wendy said relatives, neighbors, and friends have visited daily to offer support, but their house feels empty and their lives shattered. My parents had the American dream. They thought we could live a good future here and be financially stable. But where exactly is the American dream now? How is it making America great? They said this is supposed to make America great, but they're crushing people's dreams. Our people are either constructing buildings, fixing things, or cutting y'all's grass, and yet we have to suffer by getting torn apart and throwing us out of the country like we're nothing, calling us animals, aliens, illegals, like we aren't all humans at all humans. It's just very cruel. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. Thousands in Indiana still lack electricity. A protracted delay after a storm prompts concern, as thousands of northwestern Indiana residents remained without electricity nearly 2 weeks after a violent storm. On August 11th, officials have taken to social media to voice their frustration over the restoration delays. Roughly 9,000 customers in Gary, Indiana, remained without electricity on August 23rd. Gary Mayor Eddie Melton said in a video posted to the city's Facebook. We're at day 12, and 12 days is too long for families to be without power. 12 days is too long to worry about their children, and for businesses to lose revenue, and for families to wonder when the relief is finally going to come. I want you to know I share that frustration. The storms with winds of 70 miles an hour to more than 100 miles an hour swept across northern Illinois and northwestern Indiana on August 11th, knocking down trees and damaging homes and power lines. Gary resident Desmond Poppy said in a Reuters video interview published August 22nd that his community is really under siege. Indiana Governor Mike Brown voiced similar concerns to Melton in an ex-post on August 23rd. The Indiana National Guard and teams from other state agencies have been mobilized to literally clear the way for utility crews, Brown posted after declaring a statewide emergency August 13th. There's no excuse for these delays. The area's electrical provider, Northern Indiana Public Service Company, reported on August 23rd that 16,500 customers remained without power as of 4 p.m. Central Time. We've engaged additional contractor crews throughout our service territory and continue to bring in support from neighboring utilities and mutual assistance partners from across the country. The company said, no outage is being overlooked and no customer will be left behind as we continue this restoration effort. The company said it intended to have power broadly restored to Munster, Indiana by midnight August 24th and to Gary and Portage by midnight today. The estimates should not be interpreted as exact restoration time for any individual home or business, the company said, and it could take longer to restore electricity to individual homes or businesses based on the extent of localized damage. At its highest point, 374,000 outages reported after August 11th. Melton said he made it very clear that utility provider that the pace of restoration is unacceptable for the thousands of residents who remain in the dark. Harvard settled suits over stolen body parts. The school will pay $53 million and plan a medical scholarship. Harvard University has agreed to pay $53 million to settle lawsuits filed by families who say a staff member stole their loved ones' remains from the school's morgue and sold them. The Suffolk County Superior Court judge issued a preliminary approval for the settlement this week, according to online court records reviewed by USA Today. Harvard Medical School will also establish a scholarship for medical students to honor its anatomical donors beginning in the 2027-2028 academic year. The settlement comes 3 years after multiple families filed lawsuits beginning in June 2023 and claimed they donated remains of loved ones to the university. The remains were exposed to unlawful mishandling, viewing and dissection, and or sale to third parties by the now former manager of the Harvard Medical School morgue, Cedric Lodge. Here is a look back at the case. Last year, both Lodge, who's 58, and his wife, Denise Lodge, who's 65, were sentenced for interstate transport of stolen human remains. The former manager was sentenced to 96 months in prison, and his wife received a sentence of 12 months and a day in prison, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. According to court documents, the families suffered significant mental anguish and severe emotional distress once they found out about the situation. According to the plaintiffs, among the plaintiffs were a daughter whose mother had arranged to have her own remains donated once she died, as well as a niece and a son whose loved ones agreed to donate their remains for medical research before their own deaths. Initially, multiple families filed lawsuits against the university. A judge dismissed the cases, but the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court order in October revived the lawsuits. Eventually, the lawsuits were consolidated into one, according to court documents. George Daly, Harvard's Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, and Bernard Chang, the Dean for Medical Education at Harvard Medical School, told the school community on August 17th that Lodge's scheme was despicable, abhorrent, and a flagrant betrayal of our values as a medical community. Lodge was manager of the Harvard Medical School morgue. He worked there for nearly 3 decades, beginning in February 1995. The scheme unfolded between 2018 and March 2020, prosecutors said in a news release. Families who are interested in donating their remains of their loved ones for medical research can do so by completing an agreement with the school's Anatomical Gifts program. In relation to the lawsuits, the cadavers that have been donated had already been used for research and teaching purposes. The remains were supposed to be cremated and returned to the donor's family or laid to rest in a cemetery, according to court documents. As part of his job, Lodge was supposed to coordinate moving the cadavers to and from teaching labs. Once the school was done with them, preparing them to go to the crematorium or for burial. Instead, prosecutors say Lodge took the human remains, including organs, brains, skin, hands, faces, dissected heads, and other body parts. He took the body parts to his home in New Hampshire, where he and his wife sold them, shipping them to buyers in other states, sometimes allowing buyers to pick up the remains. According to the lawsuits, Lodge let some of the other defendants into the morgue to look at the bodies and choose the ones they wanted to buy. Lodge was placed on leaves of absence, and he was fired on May 23rd. According to the lawsuits, one of the leave of absence took place 2 weeks before the school said it knew about the scheme. Harvard knew or should have known that the defendant, Cedric Lodge, was mishandling donor bodies and allowing unauthorized third parties into the morgue, and failed to take adequate and appropriate measures to prevent it. And what rules is Harvard accused of violating? Rules include clearly describing the use of cadavers, documenting the use of cadavers, and having those records reviewed by an institutional oversight committee on a regular basis, following all state and local requirements when shipping cadavers, keeping cadavers in facilities that are appropriate and can only be entered by authorized personnel, and disposing of cadaver remains properly and documenting it. Ex-deputy convicted in Massey case dies. He has sought medical release per the Illinois law. Sean Grayson, a former Sangamon County Sheriff's deputy convicted of murdering Sonia Massey in her home in 2024, died on August 23rd, his lawyer said. Daniel Foltz Springfield, one of Grayson's defense attorney, confirmed the death. Messages seeking comment from the Illinois Department of Corrections were not immediately returned to the State Journal Register. Grayson's death comes a little more than 3 weeks after his hearing before Illinois Prisoner Review Board. Grayson, who was being held out of state, sought early release, but the board denied his request in a 3-0 vote. Panel members did not comment on the case after hearing testimony and voting. Grayson sought the hearing under a statute enacted in Illinois in 2022 that allows prisoners who have terminal illnesses or advanced medical condition to apply for release. He was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2023 and stage 4 rectal cancer and cancer in his liver and lungs later on. The former sheriff's deputy, who is white, was serving a 20-year sentence after a Peoria County jury convicted him of second-degree murder in October. He had faced first-degree murder charges before the 9-woman, 3-man jury received instructions on the lesser charges of second-degree murder. Many supporters of Massey, a 36-year-old black woman, and the mother of two children, didn't believe a second-degree murder conviction was harsh enough. Grayson was sentenced to the maximum term in January by 7th Circuit Presiding Judge Ryan Cadigan. Before sentencing, Grayson asked the Massey family for forgiveness, but said he accepted their anger. The former deputy fatally shot Massey in her Cabbage Patch neighborhood home on July 6, 2024, after she called 911 to report a possible intruder. Video from the body-worn camera of Grayson's partner, Dawson Foley, captured the shooting and drew the international attention to the case. Grayson did not activate his body-worn camera until after the shooting. Inside Massey's home, Grayson told her to take a pot of hot water off the stove. While holding the pot, Massey said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." Grayson responded by saying, "You better not," and that he would shoot Massey. He pulled out his weapon and yelled at Massey to drop the pot. "Okay, I'm sorry," Mason said before ducking behind her kitchen counter. Grayson approached and fired 3 times, striking Massey once in the face. She was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. He pulled out his weapon. Concerning Massey's comment, I interpret this to mean she was going to kill me, Grayson wrote in his report. Within weeks, Grayson was fired and arrested on murder charges. Sangamon Sheriff Jack Campbell retired after pressure from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker to resign. To resolve a federal probe by the Department of Justice, the sheriff's sheriff's office and county agreed to update its procedures and training to better engage those experiencing mental health crises. Questions have centered on the hiring of Grayson, who worked for 6 different agencies in 4 years before joining the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. His record included 2 DWIs and a discharge from the Army for serious misconduct and complaints against him for the people he policed, as well as other law enforcement officials. Details of the previous law enforcement work were excluded from the murder trial. El Nino grows into a monster as nickname gains strength. It's very strong for now, but don't call it super. With sharks on the move, sea surface temperatures skyrocketing, and one tropical system after another in the eastern Pacific, signs of potentially historic El Nino seem to be popping up all over. This climate powerhouse is expected to reach unprecedented strength later in 2026, inspiring a flurry of colorful descriptive terms across social media posts, blogs, and news stories. It's been called monster, or mega, mind-blowing, or even flamethrower have appeared in posts and headlines to describe it. Grasping for a catchy description seems only natural. We name fires and hurricanes. We've debated naming winter storms. The intense 2015-16 El Nino was widely dubbed Godzilla, as people compared it to the very strong El Nino in 97 to 98. That nickname even emerged in scientific papers. Yet scientists have consistently said the appropriate term for this El Nino is simply very strong. The description comes after from an official classification from NOAA. It's based on the 3-month average that characterizes El Nino as weak, moderate, strong, or very strong. Even so, very strong doesn't seem to have the same cachet as Category 5 hurricane or an EF5 tornado. That leaves meteorologists and social media users and journalists reaching for adjectives to describe this El Nino. Super is the description most often being used, but that has prompted reminders from science communicators who say that at the very least it shouldn't be super with a capital S, because it's not an official NOAA term. Humans tend to want to name and compare historic weather events. It makes it easier to understand the events. As the Pacific heats up this summer, the term super has grown on some of the scientists who were uneasy with the word earlier in the summer. Especially if this event meets or exceeds the peak level seen in previous El Nino years, maybe we'll need language to differentiate it, said Emily Becker, a research professor at University of Miami's Rosenstiel School. Climate scientist Michael Mann was not a fan of using the word super before El Nino arrived. Now that the event has materialized, it's fair to characterize it in those terms, said Mann, the director of the Penn Center for Science. It does look like it will potentially be the largest El Nino on record. Because such strong events are still unusual, we don't have a lot of comparisons for this. We've only had a few extreme El Ninos that we can point to. Without a tangible way to create a comparison, how do you know if this El Nino is any worse? Ultimately, what's in a name doesn't seem to have a big role in the public risk perception. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:31, and it's on to the money section. Tariff refunds are helping some shoppers. Walmart to use return funds to lower prices. Walmart became the latest retailer to say it will begin using its tariff refunds to lower prices for its shoppers. In the retailer's earnings call on August 20th, Chief Financial Officer John David Rainey said Walmart received $2.9 billion in tariff refunds, which will be used in a combination of rollbacks across food, general merchandise, consumables, and fashion. We know consumers are looking for a variety of things across the basket, he said. Earlier this summer, Walmart also lowered prices on thousands of items in stores at its stores in Sam's Club, including staples like beef. Why are businesses getting tariff refunds? U.S. businesses began receiving refunds after the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs imposed by administration of Donald Trump under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. Otherwise, other tariffs remain in place. A USA Today analysis in June examined more than 630 Securities and Exchange Commission filings that referenced the Supreme Court ruling and found that at least 90 publicly traded companies were seeking tariff refunds. Some companies, including UPS, are giving refunds to customers who file claims. Others, like Amazon, have announced they will automatically credit a small number of customers whose purchases were affected by import tariffs. But the retailer said it absorbed most of the cost of the tariffs rather than passing them on to customers, and that would utilize refunds to continue to invest in low prices for customers. Amazon Chief Financial Officer Chief Financial Officer Brian Olsavsky said during the retailer's July 30th earnings call. Target executives did not give the specifics during its August 19th earnings call about plans for tariff refunds, and Target did not respond to an inquiry from USA Today. Lower prices keep Walmart competitive. Neil Saunders, a retail analyst at the research and analytics firm Global Data, said Walmart has not explicitly said where it will use its refunds to lower prices, but is likely to be on essential items where price reductions will be meaningful to consumers and help Walmart maintain its competitiveness. However, this will help, but it's not going to bring prices back to the 2019 levels or create dramatic price reductions, Saunders said. Wider investments will include efforts such as improved stores, which Saunders said is something the retailers have been working on for a while. But not all businesses and retailers have been as clear about where they will use the refunds they received. Some will reduce prices, some may refund consumers directly, and others may simply take it as profit. There's no universal response as to how retailers reacted to tariffs varied, and not all simply passed them across to consumers in form of higher prices, he said. Trump's company is selling faster access to his posts. Legal and ethical questions abound over the service. President Donald Trump's social media company is charging clients up to $100,000 a month for priority access to Trump's own official announcements and other market-moving government news. There's an obvious dollar value to getting a jump on government news, and Trump's posts about the new tariffs and military actions do indeed move markets. But is the new service legal? Is it ethical? One thing's for sure, just a few years ago it would have been unimaginable. I wonder if anyone ever envisioned a time when the head of a country would do something like this, said Jessica Tillipman, Associate Dean for Government Procurement Law Studies at George Washington University Law School. On August 20th, a group of congressional Democrats introduced legislation to block social media companies from selling faster access to government employees' accounts that communicate material information. Politicians must not convert public office into a putrescent platform for pay-per-view profiteering, Liccardo said in a statement. Presidents, government agencies, and corporate America used to announce news and posted on official websites and sent out emails years ago in rumpled faxes. More recently, however, governments and companies have taken to announcing news over social media posts on X, which is formerly Twitter, or on official Facebook pages. In his first presidential term, Trump became the most prolific Twitter poster in presidential history. One Boston Globe report counted 2,400 Trump tweets in his first 11 months. But Twitter banned Trump in the final days of that term, citing a risk of incitement of violence after a pro-Trump's mob stormed the Capitol on January 26, 2021. Facebook, Instagram, and other communication sites blocked Trump's accounts as well. Trump's accused the platforms of silencing him. For his second term, Trump migrated to Truth Social, a platform that he controls. Trump owns the largest stake in Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social, that through a revocable trust of which he is the sole beneficiary. That means Trump communicates with largely through a commercial social media platform, albeit one that has allowed everyone equal access to his post until now. Trump API announced on July 16th promised to deliver real-time access to posts from the highest-ranking Truth Social accounts, a group dominated by Trump, his family, and the administration. An API, or Application Programming Interface, allows one software company to talk to another directly, according to an explainer from Amazon. For example, the weather app on an IP phone communicates with weather service software to deliver updates to your screens. Markets already move on Truth Social posts, said Kevin McGurn, an interim CEO of Trump Media, in a release. The goal of Truth API, the release said, is to deliver posts more quickly to paying customers to avoid the cost of delay. Does it give customers an unfair advantage? More than 10 paying customers subscribe to Truth API. In that call, someone asked Trump Media whether respond to criticism that he gave access an unfair advantage by selling access. McGurn replied that the criticism was misinformed. The service merely delivers machine-readable feeds of public available Truth posts from the platform's top accounts in milliseconds. Paying customers really weren't getting the posts early, just fractionally faster than everyone else. Keys to your legacy. Trusts are gaining popularity in estate planning, but as the name suggests, they require a great deal of confidence in others, lawyers warn. The race for estate planning is on as baby boomers prepare to pass down an estimated $124 trillion over the next 12 years. Although 56% of U.S. adults have no estate planning documents whatsoever, the people who are planning are increasingly choosing more comprehensive planning vehicles, according to Trust and Will's 2026 Estate Planning Report. Trust ownerships rose to 14% by 11% from 11% in 2025. Though that may suggest Americans who are planning are doing so more thoughtfully. Naming the wrong trustee can destroy your plans, legacy, and your family, lawyers said. The wrong trustee can reverse all your work to control how, when, and to whom to pass your assets, and avoid slow public court proceedings. When a parent dies, there's a trust. The most common call we get is the trust has been valid. It isn't my sister stole the money. It's much smaller than that. It's my sister is the trustee. It's been 8 months and she won't tell me anything. What's a wrong trustee? A wrong trustee is someone who's a poor choice to manage the trust. Some may lack financial skills and knowledge and have conflict of interest or poor relationships with beneficiaries, lack time and organization to perform trustee duties, or are partial. They can also be trustees who breach trust by ignoring what is stated in the trust document, failing to communicate with or providing accounting to beneficiaries, stealing assets or failing to distribute assets or pay valid debts in a timely manner. What can happen with the wrong trustees? Everything can go wrong because the effectiveness of a will or a trust hinges on a person entrusted to administer it. For Duke Shi of Altadena knows this firsthand. His father named all 4 of his children as trustees by descending birth order should one become unable to execute. What his father didn't anticipate when he set up the plan was his children didn't want those responsibilities, and that Shi's siblings would join to contest the will, which left Shi a larger share. My sister, as the eldest, quit as trustee a little after 1 year, and the next, the older of 2 brothers, quit after a couple of months, she said. The third sibling, my older brother, declined to serve at all. That left Shi because he's disabled. But because he's disabled, my attorney thought I would be better protected to receive my disability benefits if I were not a trustee. That was a huge mistake because I'm not receiving any benefits. Even if I were, I could have still have been trustee. Shi's siblings then chose a professional fiduciary to act as trustee. She finally agreed to the plan, but the contest continued until a mediation and settlement resulted. The settlement ensured that his siblings immediately received their portions of the estate, while Shi's is tied up with a trustee who doesn't communicate with him but continues to bill. And if she dies, his siblings get his share, which ended up a fraction of what I should have received. In my will, my father was trying to give me more to provide for his disabled son. It was thank me for being caregiver. My siblings became jealous and joined the contest of the unequal split. All that meant many thousands of dollars, upwards of $150,000, were burned up in attorney and trustee fees. His father would be devastated. He thought he did everything right by hiring an attorney to write what he thought was a bulletproof will. Beneficiaries such as she can fight, but lawyers' fees are prohibitive and justice is slow. How can you pick the right trustee? Be honest and check your gut. Ask practical questions instead of emotional ones. Has this person ever managed money that wasn't theirs? Do they hit deadlines? Do they call you back when the news is bad? Can they say no to their own spouse? Can they tell a sibling something that a sibling doesn't want to hear and still show up at Thanksgiving? If the answer to a few of those is no, you can still honor that person in the plan, just don't give them the checkbook. Also recognize that being both beneficiary and trustee is difficult. You're responsible for the equity of other people and protecting your own rights. Communicate. Commit to transparency. Be honest with siblings and heirs on how the estate will transfer. Communication is free. It's the fix that costs nothing. And your own voice does nothing more than prevent this than anything I can draft. It's only part of this money that money can't buy later. If you're not comfortable talking about money, as in many older generation might be, consider writing a letter. Write a personal letter expressing why you made the choices you made and what you want the heirs to do with the money. That can be so helpful for whoever steps in as successor trustee or executor. Heirs who feel surprised can understand your true intentions. What if it's too late and you already picked wrong? Here's the ladder. Here's what you can do. Get the document and find out what you're entitled to. Send a dated letter asking for a copy of the trust, list of the access. Have a lawyer send the same letter. This is where most of those quietly end. You put your siblings in front of their own lawyer and tells them when she's personally on the hook. The accounting isn't optional, and staying silent isn't going to cost her out of her own pocket. Well, you're listening to a reading today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:45. And here's Ask Johnny, the human relations column. You can walk the line between compassion and accountability at work, by Johnny C. Taylor. Question: I manage someone who has always been a strong performer, but lately that person's work has slipped because of serious personal issues. I want to be compassionate, but the rest of the team is starting to feel the impact. How do I support this worker without lowering expectations or hurting team morale? And where do I draw the line between compassion and accountability? And Johnny's answer: one of the biggest misconceptions about leadership is that empathy and accountability are somehow at odds. They are not. In fact, the best leaders understand you can't effectively lead without both. Employees deserve compassion when life becomes difficult, but they also deserve clear expectations. Those two things can and should coexist. When a high-performing employee suddenly begins struggling, don't jump to conclusions. Start with a conversation, not a performance discussion, but a genuine check-in. If an employee is dealing with significant personal challenges, your role isn't to solve those problems or become their counselor. People don't need you to fix every problem. They need you to see them as a human being. Be sure they are aware of the resources your organization provides, whether it's paid time off, leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act, an employee assistance program, or other available benefits. Once you've had that conversation, establish a shared understanding of what comes next. If the employee needs time away or another workplace accommodation that's available to them, help them access it. If they tell you they're able to continue working, it's reasonable to expect them to fulfill the responsibilities of their role. Grace may influence how you manage the situation, but it shouldn't eliminate accountability. Your responsibility also extends beyond one employee. You owe fairness to the entire team. If one person's workload consistently becomes everyone else's burden, morale and trust will eventually suffer. While you should always respect the employee's privacy, don't ignore the impact on the rest of the team. Strong leaders support individuals without creating lasting inequities for everyone else. If performance doesn't improve despite reasonable support and the resources available to the employee, it's appropriate to return to your organization's normal performance management process. Performance expectations shouldn't disappear simply because someone is facing personal challenges. Once you've offered appropriate support, it's important to continue management performance with clarity, consistency, and respect. Leadership isn't about choosing between compassion and accountability. It's about having the wisdom to practice both. The managers employees trust most are the ones who genuinely care about their people while helping them to meet the standards that allow both the individual and the team to succeed. Amazon to expand drone delivery to nearly 500 cities by the end of the year. Amazon's plans to dramatically expand its Prime Air drone delivery service, saying it expects to reach nearly 500 U.S. cities and towns by the end of 2026, as retailers race to make airborne deliveries a larger part of everyday shopping. The expansion would increase Prime Air's footprint sixfold, giving tens of millions more customers to access to drone deliveries. Amazon said eligible shoppers can order millions of products, including groceries, electronics, medications, and household essentials, with deliveries arriving in as fast as 30 minutes. The announcement comes as the drone delivery industry appears poised for rapid growth. The Federal Aviation Administration has proposed rules that will make it easier for certified operators to fly drones beyond a pilot's visual line of sight. A change companies say could significantly reduce costs and allow services to expand more quickly, according to Reuters. Here's what to know about Amazon's Prime Air expansion, including where drone delivery is available and where it's headed next. Where is it available? Prime Air now operates from 11 delivery sites, serving metro areas including Phoenix, Tampa, Florida, Kansas City, Kansas, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Detroit, Omaha, Nebraska, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Waco, Texas. Amazon said service will soon launch in Chicago, Cleveland, Atlanta, Boise, and Syracuse, with additional communities expected later this year as the company works toward its nationwide expansion goal. What can you order? Well, most items weighing 5 pounds or less that fit inside a large shoebox are eligible for drone delivery. That includes many groceries, cosmetic, medications, electronics, and household products. Prime members receive free drone delivery on orders of $50 or more. Orders under $50 cost Prime members $2.99, and customers without Prime membership pay $4.99. Customers in eligible areas will see drone delivery option during checkout, select a delivery option on their property, and receive their order after the drone confirms the drop zone is clear. Drone delivery is gaining momentum. Amazon's expansion comes as federal regulators consider changes that could make it easier for drone operators to scale their networks. The FAA has proposed rules that would allow certified operators to routinely fly drones beyond their visual line of sight, potentially reducing the need for lengthy waiver processes. Amazon says it keeps flights safe. Amazon said Prime Air operates under FAA Part 135 certification, the same regulatory framework used for commercial air carriers. Its drones use onboard cameras and sensors to navigate and avoid obstacles through a detect and avoid system that independently monitors surrounding airspace. The company said cameras are only used for navigation and obstacle detection and are not monitored by people or used to track people. Amazon said its drones can operate in light rain and are fully electric, and each delivery typically produces about 30 seconds of noise during drop-off. Now it's back to the first section. Studies ties album releases to fatal crashes. Traffic deaths rise along with new music streams. A new album may be reason to trump the volume, but new research suggests highly anticipated music releases also could coincide with an increase in traffic deaths. Researchers from Harvard Medical School and Mass General Brigham found the U.S. traffic fatalities were almost 15% higher on the release dates of 10 of the most streamed albums from 2017 through 2022 than on the 10 days before and after those releases. The study, published August 17th, estimated that 139 traffic fatalities of major album releases on those release days compared with 120 on the surrounding days. The research was inspired by Vishal Patel, a physician at Mass General Brigham and a researcher at Harvard Medical School. Patel told CNN he realized he had drifted out of his lane while scrolling Spotify for songs from a new Taylor Swift album. The experience prompted him and his colleagues to investigate whether traffic fatalities increased when major artists released new albums. The researchers analyzed 233,000 traffic fatalities in the fatality reporting system from 2017 through 2022. And they compared fatalities on the release dates of 10 highly streamed albums with those during the 10 days before and after, adjusting for factors including days of the week, federal holidays, week of the year, and calendar year. Music streaming surged on album release days. The albums identified the 10 albums using Spotify data, showing daily streams for the platform's top 200 songs in the United States. The albums including releases by artists such as Taylor Swift, Drake, Bad Bunny, Harry Styles, Kendrick Lamar, and Kanye West. According to the study, daily streaming volume increased about 43% on the release dates, rising from an average of 86 million streams on surrounding days to 123 million days on the release dates. The study found about 18 more traffic dates on each major album release day than on surrounding days across the 10 release date study. The increase was larger among younger drivers and male drivers, according to the study. Researchers also found larger increases in crashes involving a single occupant, sober drivers, and clear weather in vehicles equipped with infotainment systems. The studies did not establish that they directly caused the accidents. Patel told CNN that researchers could not determine from the data whether a driver was using a phone when the fatal accident occurred. Several mechanisms could explain the findings, including drivers using their phones to access new music, interacting with infotainment systems, or simply responding to the music. Researchers also looked at other possible explanations, including travel to the album release site and alcohol use. Because the increase in fatal crashes was greater among sober drivers, it was not concentrated during nighttime hours, they concluded that those factors were unlikely to be the main cause. To make sure the findings weren't due to chance, researchers conducted additional analyses. The increase in traffic deaths remained when they looked only at Friday afternoon album releases, and randomly selected dates did not show the same patterns. Researchers also found that 9 of the 10 albums studied had more traffic fatalities on the release dates than on comparable days without a album release. You're listening to a reading of the articles from USA Today for Tuesday, August 21st, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after your short break. Your reader this first hour has been Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Jeff Shapiro. Real or fool's gold? Count these 8 among college football's most polarizing teams for 2026. In college football, as in so many other facets of life, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When games have yet to kick off and there's nothing off of which to judge a team other than roster retention, coaching changes, depth charts, statistical projections, and most of all, vibes, that's especially true. Entering the 2026 season, there's a wide variance of opinion on a number of teams, including some that found their way into the preseason U.S. LBM Coaches Poll. Some are programs that have struggled the past few years, but have been re-energized by the arrival of a new coach. Others are historic powerhouses that have faded recently but still have built-in name recognition and goodwill. To some, these teams are afterthoughts that might struggle to make a bowl. To others, though, they're undervalued assets, ones that, if things break right, could even find their way into the college football playoff. Who are these squads for the upcoming season? Here's a closer look at the most polarizing teams. Ole Miss. Among national championship contenders, there's perhaps no team with a wider range in opinion than Ole Miss. The number 10 Rebels bring back a number of top contributors, namely quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, running back Juwan Lacey, and defensive lineman Will Eccles, from a team that was 5 points away from playing for a national title last season. They also famously just lost the coach, who led them to one of the greatest seasons in school history and the program's longest run of sustained success post-integration. Pete Golden did an outstanding job rallying the team to the playoff semifinals last season after Lane Kiffin's messy exit to LSU. But how will a first-time head coach fare after a full off-season in the job and with new coordinators running the offense and defense? If Golden's got the goods, this team has as good of a chance as anyone to win a championship. If he's not up to the task, though, this is a talented group that could very easily underachieve. Clemson. On one hand, the Tigers have won fewer than 10 games only twice since 2011. On the other hand, 2 of those have come in the past 3 seasons. Dabo Swinney built a program synonymous with frustrating shortcomings into one of the most powerful forces in the sport nationally for a decade. But Clemson's fortunes have waned in recent years as criticism is mounted of Swinney's approach, namely his aversion to transfers. Swinney is still an excellent coach, and there's still plenty of talent on the Tigers roster, like preseason All-American linebacker Sammy Brown. Taken together, it was enough to get them a spot at number 23 in the preseason coaches poll. But after a 7-6 season in 2025, and with at least 4 losses in each of the past 3 seasons, it's fair to wonder if Clemson's reign as a perennial playoff contender has come and gone. UCLA. Bob Chesney has won everywhere he has coached, from Division III South Regina to Division II Assumption, to football championship subdivision, Holy Cross, to James Madison, the last of which he led to a playoff appearance in his second season last year. After taking over a strong program from Kurt Cignetti at JMU, he inherits a rebuild at UCLA, which went just 3-9 last season and has won more than 8 games in a season just once since 2015. He brings 10 players over with him from James Madison, including do-everything star Wayne Knight, and managed to keep quarterback Nico Amaleva, who still has time to live up to the immense promise he brought into college as a 5-star recruit. The Bruins likely won't be a wag on immediately, but for the first time in a while, the vibes are decidedly up in Westwood. Florida. Since a Cotton Bowl appearance at the end of the 2020 season, the Gators have been mired in mediocrity, going 29-34 during that particular time. They've got newfound hope with the arrival of coach John Sumrall, who is 43-12 as a head coach and just took Tulane to the college football playoff. Sumrall has made inspired hires for his staff, none of them more impactful than offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner, and brought aboard a top 30 transfer portal class. Florida isn't being discussed as a national title contender. It was 9th of 16 teams in the SEC's preseason poll. But regardless, a team that has won more than 6 games in a season just once in the past 5 years received the second most votes of squads outside the top 25 in the preseason USLBM coaches poll. Sumrall's more than proved his chops as a coach, but can he turn it around that quickly? Utah. Under Kyle Whittingham, the Utes were one of the steadiest winners in the sport, with at least 9 victories in 8 of the past 12 seasons. After 21 years, Whittingham is gone, having stepped down from the post before quickly resettling at Michigan. Utah begins the season number 21 in the coaches' poll and brings back some strong pieces from last season's 11-win team, including quarterback Devin Dampier and return specialist Manny Carvalho. But there are understandably questions about first-time head coach Morgan Scalley, who had been the program's coach in waiting for years, an arrangement that seldom ever works. The next several months will provide a revealing glimpse at how much of the Utes' sustained success was due to Whittingham and what he had built in Salt Lake City. Oklahoma State. 9 months ago, the Cowboys were finishing off a 2025 season in which they went 1-11, their fewest wins in a season since 1991. Now they're being discussed as a potential playoff sleeper. What changed? A whole lot. Eric Morse steps in to replace Mike Gundy as head coach after leading North Texas to the best season in program history. Morris is not heading to Stillwater alone either, as he brings several key pieces from the highest scoring offense in the Football Bowl subdivision last season. That group of newcomers is led by quarterback Drew Mestemaker, who threw for a bowl subdivision leading 4,379 yards last season, 406 yards more than the next closest player, while piloting an offense that averaged 45.1 points per game. There are questions about how that production will translate going from the American Conference to the Big 12 and exactly how much Oklahoma State can improve in just one season. But after Gundy's decorated tenure ended with a pair of down seasons, the Cowboys once again have reason for optimism. Cal. The Golden Bears were below average and often forgettable under Justin Wilcox, going just 48-55 in his 9-year tenure, but heading into 2026, there's plenty of reason for excitement. Much of it centers around quarterback Jaron Kiwe Segapoletole, a 2025 5-star recruit who had an electric freshman season and stuck with the program through its coaching transition. Since being hired new coach, Tosh Lupoi has burnished his reputation as an ace recruiter by surrounding Segabolute with more talent, bringing in a top 15 transfer portal haul. Cal has a favorable schedule, too, one that is some dreaming of the program's first season with more than 8 wins since 2008. Is that hope enough to override years of mediocrity? A cash-strapped athletic department and a conference in which it's 3,000 miles away from most of the teams it plays? We'll see. Finally, South Carolina. This time a year ago, the Gamecocks were one of the darlings of the sport, the preseason number 13 team, bringing back most of its biggest stars after going 9-4 in 2024. They fell drastically short of those lofty expectations, suffering through a 4-8 season that included just 1 victory in SEC play. This season, it brings back one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the sport, Lenore Sellers, and one of the nation's most disruptive defensive players in edge rusher Dylan Stewart. Coach Shane Beamer made some needed tweaks, too, working to shore up the offensive line and bringing in a new offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles after an inexplicably poor 2025 season. Under Beamer, South Carolina has alternated between strong seasons and less than stellar ones, going from 8-5 in 2022 to 5-7 in 2023 to 9-4 in 2024, and then to 4-8 last season. If that trend continues, it could be one of the sport's surprises this season. Monken's Browns QB1 is Watson. The Cleveland Browns quarterback competition has a winner, and his name is Deshaun Watson. Watson will start week 1 for the Browns this season, according to coach Todd Monken. 4 competitors entered the race: Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Taylon Green. Watson and Sanders were always the leaders in the clubhouse, even if Monken declared it to be an open battle all summer long. It marked the 2nd consecutive season with a training camp battle for the Dog Pound, which was won by Joe Flacco in 2025. Now, Watson will get that honor in 2026 and can prepare accordingly for the Browns' Week 1 opener in Jacksonville against the Jaguars on September 13th. Both Watson and Sanders were given the opportunity to start through the first 2 weeks of the preseason. Each were given the first half to audition, while the other had a chance to play the third quarter. The decision to split game reps came as the duo also alternated practice reps with the first team in practice. Monken maintained throughout camp that he wasn't going into the battle with any preconceived notions, explaining to USA Today Sports' Jared Bell that the competition was close ahead of the Browns' preseason exhibition opener. It's close, Monken told USA Today Sports before camp practice. People somehow think that, like, I have some hidden agenda or like there's some preconceived notion. Is that what they think I would do? I would just split the reps if I didn't think it was a competition? That would be really silly. If I thought one was the starter, I'd give him the 1 reps. After evaluating everything, Monken decided on who will be his top dog. The rookie head coach just has to hope that the wins will follow. Watson was named the starter despite his comments disparaging Browns fans following the team's 2nd preseason game. Watson was booed throughout his outing at Huntington Bank Field, his first appearance at Cleveland's home stadium since he tore his Achilles during a game on October 20th, 2024. He did not take kindly to the reception he received, calling it personal and disrespectful. I think the whole world knows it has nothing to do about the performance, Watson told reporters. It's a little bit more personal than that. So I think it's a disrespectful thing. I'm going to keep whatever I feel with me and my family internally on how I feel about that and just move on. Watson appeared to be referencing the sexual misconduct allegations that had been levied against him. He was the subject of 27 lawsuits dating back to March of 2021, all by women who accused him of sexual misconduct. All 27 of the lawsuits have since been dismissed or settled, and Watson has maintained his innocence. While Watson believes the booing isn't performance-related, he has struggled since, being acquired by the Browns in a blockbuster trade with the Houston Texans and signing a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract. He has appeared in just 19 games across 4 seasons, posting a 9-10 record and an 80.7 passer rating. On to the PGA Tour. Clark drives off with big playoff win in a BMW. Wyndham Clark hadn't made a birdie in the final round of the BMW Championship and had blown his 5-stroke lead at the start of the day. Major winners Rory McIlroy, Gary Woodland, and past FedEx Cup champion Patrick Cantlay stacked up behind him August 23rd, and McIlroy, the reigning Masters champion, eventually caught Clark at the 11th. The momentum was all on Rory's side, but I knew I just needed one little spark to get it on my side, he said. Earlier in his career, Clark, who's 32 years old, would have folded, but he's playing the best golf of his career these days and found the spark that he needed to birdie the final 3 holes and shoot even par 70 at Bellerive Country Club in St. Louis to win by 3 strokes over Cantlay and 4 over McIlroy. I would say through the first 3 days of this event, I felt like the best player in the world, and then today humbled me a little bit, Clark said Sunday. It was fun, actually. As much as I would have loved to run away with this, it was fun getting the juices going and really feel the angst coming down at the end. Clark surged to a 5-stroke lead heading into the final round by playing 7 under during an 8-hole stretch on Saturday. It started unraveling for Clark early at the first hole of the final round, where he made bogey, and my mind was just racing, he said. When he pounded his par putt at number 6 through the break, he recalled thinking, man, I'm just not there mentally. It was deja vu all over again. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. At the U.S. Open in June, he carried a commanding lead into the final round, and the fans cheered at his front 9 miscues, hoping to see world number 1 Scottie Scheffler make history by completing the career Grand Slam. This time, they were split between pulling for Gary Woodland, who has battled back from brain surgery and grew up 3.5 hours down the road, and for McIlroy to provide some drama. First, Woodland trimmed the lead to 1, but he cold-topped his tee shot at number 9 into a creek and made double bogey. He finished tied for 4th. Cantlay twice cut the deficit to 1, but made bogey at 9 and double bogey at number 11. He birdied the last 3 holes to finish 2nd, jumped into the top 30, and earned a spot in the Tour Championship along with Woodland and Robert McIntyre. McIlroy, who entered the day 5 back, kept working, and when Clark bogeyed the 10th, his 3rd bogey of the day, and McIlroy rolled in a 9-foot birdie at number 11, Clark's lead was gone. Dave, my caddy, said, hey, our back's against the wall, and that's when you play some of your best golf. He goes, this is fun. Let's just embrace it, recalled Clark. So I just kept telling myself I'm in a good spot. I'm in a good spot. That's where I want to be, and good things are going to happen. The positive self-talk is an example of his work paying off with mental coach Julie Ilian. She remembers veteran pro Chez Reavie telling her if she could help Clark with his focus and determination, he'd be capable of greatness, and called him the best ball striker he'd ever seen. Clark ranked 2nd in strokes gained, approach, and 2nd in proximity to the hole for the week. For all of his talent, Clark had produced no birdies through the first 15 holes until he broke the seal at number 16. First, McIlroy drew a 5-iron to 15 feet at the 229-yard par 3 16th, and with the pressure on, Clark stepped up and drilled a beauty of his own. I kind of told myself I can do the same thing, and I said this shot actually favors me more because I hit a cut and he hits a draw. I hit a high 5-iron, went a little farther than I thought, but yeah, I thought putting that shot roughly the same distance as him was a big deal, Clark said. Earlier in the round, McIlroy had drained a few putts, but he'd gone first, and Clark failed to answer. This time, Clark was just outside McIlroy and poured in the putt, unleashing a furious fist pump as he regained the lead. Collapse thwarted. McIlroy missed his birdie to tie it up again, and when he made a sloppy bogey at 17 and Clark drained another birdie putt from 13 feet, it was all but over. I thought that was a big thing for the momentum for me to make that putt and kind of put the pressure on him to make this, said Clark, who canned 17-footer in the last for good measure. He finished with a 72-hole total of 17 under, 263 for his 6th career win. McIlroy ruled his putter, picking a bad time to misbehave once the two were knotted at 14 under. I gave myself plenty of chances, I just couldn't get a putt to drop. Those final few holes, McIlroy said, I always felt like I needed to just get my nose ahead to really try to put the pressure on Wyndham, and I couldn't. And McIlroy also reopened the debate for PGA Tour Player of the Year heading to the Tour Championship, where the winner of the FedEx Cup could determine who gets voted as winner of the Jack Nicklaus Award. After all but conceding the trophy to world number 1 Scottie Scheffler, who finished tied for 12th despite dealing with hand, foot, and mouth disease during the BMW, for a 5th consecutive time ahead of the tournament, McIlroy said Player of the Year still is up for grabs. You know, Wyndham doing what he did today, yeah, next week will make things interesting, he said. Clark, winner of the U.S. Open in June, won for the 3rd time this season, tying for the most wins on the PGA Tour this year with Matt Fitzpatrick and Chris Gotterup. He leaped into the top 6 of the U.S. President's Cup point standings and secured one of the 6 automatic spots on the 12-man team. Clark stopped short of campaigning for himself, but after his latest victory in a playoff event, he had every reason to be proud of the comeback he has made after a rocky season last year. I think it shows that I'm one of the best players in the world, Clark said. I know everyone maybe gives me a hard time and roots for other people, but I feel like I've kind of come into my own. 3 wins in one season is my best year yet, coming off my worst year ever. Yeah, I'm just really pleased where I am right now. Michael Asasso wins LIV Indy. What may have been the final round of LIV golf history, 22-year-old rookie Michael Asasso earned his first professional win at LIV Golf Indianapolis, where John Ram's Legion 13 won its second straight team title in Westfield, Indiana. The cancellation of the team championship in Michigan made this the final event of LIV Golf's 5th season. The Saudi Public Investment Fund announced that it would stop funding LIV after 2026. LIV Golf has reached an agreement with a new lead investor, but the deal is not yet finalized. The prospective deal depends greatly on player buy-in, as CEO Scott O'Neill noted last week, so there's no guarantee of a 2027 season. There's been a lot that surrounded all of us for pretty much since we joined, Rahm said August 23rd, and at the end of the day, once we step on the golf course, it's just golf. Everything else goes away and we just compete. It hasn't been any harder or easier than it was. Asasso, a former NCAA champion, turned pro in January and joined High Flyers GC, the team captained by Phil Mickelson. His 10-under par 60 at the club at Chatham Hills on Friday pushed him up the leaderboard, and after a 66 on Saturday, Asasso held a one-shot lead. He turned in a bogey-free 5-under 65 on Sunday to win at 18 under, one shot better than Rahm. The Spanish star charged into late contention with his best round of the week, a 7-under 63. I told our social media guy last night, I said, I'll be honest, this is going to be the one I win. Asasso said, I spoke it into existence well before this week. The fact that it's actually come true, it's unbelievable, but yeah, I'm at a loss for words. Rahm had also wrapped up his 3rd consecutive individual LIV title at LIV Golf New York. Legion 13 won the team championship last year, but in a much different scenario. This year, because of the team championship's cancellation, the league said that the team that finished with the best score in Indianapolis would be crowned the 2026 champion and receive a reduced bonus of $8.4 million. Rahm's 17 underscore for the week led the way, bolstered by his 3 teammates, Tom McKibben of Northern Ireland, who was 11 under, Tyrell Hatton of England went under 8 under, and Caleb Surratt 8 under. That made for a combined score of 44 under par, 6 shots better than the High Flyers GC. If there's ever a format change that would benefit this team, it's that one. Giving us 4-stroke play days where all the scores count, I think it benefits us the way we play, Rahm said. I think we're very consistent, tee to green, and that plays to our advantage. Bryson DeChambeau, 64, and Spaniard Sergio Garcia at 65, tied for 3rd at 16 under, 2 back of Asasso. And while Rahm's future with the league is rumored to be in doubt, DeChambeau is viewed as the player most loyal to LIV and continuing the league in some form. As much as we're transitioning from LIV 1.0 to 2.0, I have great thoughts about what could happen next year. I wish I could be more upfront about it, DeChambeau said, but ultimately I'm proud of the fact of what we've done, the good and some of the bad that we've unfortunately had, things that have occurred. I'm going to be real with it. Not everything was perfect, but for the most part, we've done a solid job. If there's one thing that I could say, it's we did something different in the game of golf, and I'm proud of that. Standing over his ball on the first playoff hole of a sudden death playoff, Stephen Alker knew that he could win with 2 putts. He needed only 1. Alker sank a 7-foot birdie on number 18, the second straight time playing the hole, while Y.E. Yang bogeyed to win the Rogers Charity Classic on Sunday in Calgary picking up his second PGA Tour Championship win of the season and moving into the top 5 of the Charles Schwab Cup standings. It was a long day, Elker said. I was in the hunt. I would have liked to have made birdie at 18 to finish it all off, but whenever you're in the playoff, you never know what's going to happen. So I feel very relieved. I was behind the 8-ball, and it took a while to get back, but it was very pleasing. The bogey was the only miscue on the back 9 by either golfer, as they combined to go 11 under par from holes 10 through 18 in regulation, each finishing the third round at 16 under 194, one stroke better than Jerry Kelly and Zach Johnson. Yang, who teed off 6 groups before Elker, birdied 18 to end regulation and give him a 7 under 63 on the day. Elker, who started the day 1 stroke back of second-round leader Ryan Armour, shot a 5 under 65 while playing in the day's final group. After Kelly at 63 and Johnson at 65, 4 golfers finished tied for 5th at 13 under. South African Retief Goosen at 65, Michael Block at 67, Australian Richard Green at 67, and Armour, who finished at 69. Mayu Mashita wins by 9 in tying LPGA record. Mayu Yamashita, one of the smallest players in the game, loomed large in Canada. The 4'11" powerhouse dominated the field at the CPKC Women's Open in style, finishing at 23 under 257 to tie an LPGA scoring record and win by 9. I was nervous, Yamashita said after the round without the aid of an interpreter. My shot, my game, I trust my swing. Yamashita went back to Japan to work with her father, who doubles as her instructor, and the results were undeniable. One of the most precise players on the tour, Yamashita picked apart Royal Mayfair Golf Club with an opening 62 and never looked back. She added rounds of 64, 65, and 66 to finish at 23 under 257, 9 ahead of compatriot Yuri Yoshida, a woman who has missed her last 6 cuts. Yamashita tied a record set by Se-Young Kim at the 2018 Thornberry Creek LPGA Classic. Kim, by the way, finished solo 3rd in Edmonton. The home crowd had much to cheer about as 2 Canadian teens finished in the top 10. Anna Huang, a 17-year-old pro who has won 4 times on the LET, closed with a 65 to finish in a share of 4th. Aphrodite Dang, a 16-year-old amateur, took a share of 7th with a birdie on the last hole. Both are into the field of next week's FM Championship. I'm really happy that I played well in front of the best in the world, said Wang, and hopefully I can continue doing that. Former Duke player Gina Kim won the Dow Championship, a team event, this year with Anna Wilson, but missed her last 6 cuts. Kim, playing in the last group, had an eventful final round that included a drop from the coffee station of a hospitality tent. The closing 71 gave her a share of 4th. And now from soccer. A wild opening weekend produces winners and losers. The Premier League's opening weekend gave fans around the globe plenty to talk about, with late drama for some title hopefuls, 2 newly promoted teams notching wins, and demoralizing losses for Manchester United and Tottenham. Defending champion Arsenal picked up 3 points to open its campaign, while last season's runner-up Manchester City notched a dramatic comeback with goals in the 85th and 91st minutes to beat Bournemouth and Enzo Maresca's managerial debut succeeding Pep Guardiola. Brighton enjoyed a flying start with a 4-0 win against 10-man Aston Villa, a troubling result for the Champions League participants that was strip-mined of talent over the summer. Here's a look at some of the best and the worst from the first days of the 10-month-long season that wraps up in May. Winners, Arsenal. Last season's long-awaited title was absolutely torturous, and the Gunners were widely condemned for their passive approach, but a 3-0 opening day win plus a thrashing of City in the Community Shield indicate that Michael Arteta's side may have lost the restrictor plates. They know how to do it, they look really connected, and they play with a lot of purpose, which I really like, Arteta told reporters. The promoted teams. For the 4th time in the 21st century, but 2nd year in a row, Two promoted teams won their first match of the season. Hull City's 2-0 win over Manchester United was the weekend stunner, with the home side scoring two first-half set-piece goals in the club's return to the top flight after 9 years. Record-signing Nobel Mendy was one of Hull's scorers, while fans gleefully chanted, "You're getting mauled by the Tigers," at the visitors. Probably before we all went to bed last night, he couldn't have dreamt any better, Hull captain Louis Coyle told TNT Sports. Meanwhile, Ipswich Town won 2-1 at home against Sunderland, bursting the bubble of last year's promoted darling. Ipswich shelled out about $200 million on players this summer, sixth most in the league, hoping to make this stay in the President League a longer one. The results were immediate, with new forward Emerson scoring in his debut with an assist from club record signing Julio Enciso. The losers. Michael Carrick's team took 39 points, second only to Arsenal in its final 17 games last season, an incredible run. They got United back into the Champions League with a third-place finish. But even with reinforcements surely coming before the transfer deadline, in this season's Manchester United, capable of hanging near the top of the table while also competing in Europe. After narrowly avoiding relegation, the Spurs went big in the city, already committing $300 million to new additions, with even more high-priced signings likely before the window closes. Roberto De Zerbi's starting lineup featured 5 of those new players to open the campaign at Brentford, suffering an ugly 3-0 defeat that really couldn't have gone any worse. You're listening to reading today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. MLB, Philly raises the East Heat on Atlanta. All of a sudden, the Philadelphia Phillies can't lose. And a prize that didn't seem realistic, the National League East lead, is very much in play. They have not lost since tumbling out of that cornfield in Iowa, 9 consecutive wins that have been soaring up USA Today's Sports Power rankings, moving up to number 7 this week. Their latest caper came when they staged a 6-run rally, 4 runs scoring with 2 outs, to stun the St. Louis Cardinals on Kyle Schwarber's monstrous walk-off home run on August 23rd. The win kept them within 3 games of Atlanta in the East, this in a season where they once were 10.5 games off the pace. A look at our updated MLB rankings. Number 1, Milwaukee Brewers. Trevor Melgo on a 16-for-16 roll in save opportunities. Number 2, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Blake Snell looking ace-like again with 2 6-inning, 1-run starts with 15 strikeouts. Number 3, the Tampa Bay Rays. Catcher Kenny Piper homers in his first major league start. Number 4, the Atlanta Braves. 1 bad week and suddenly a first-round bye looks challenging. Coming in at number 5, the Chicago Cubs. Pete Crow Armstrong, now up to 33 homers, already a career high. At number 6, the New York Yankees. Good news, just 3 games behind the Rays. Bad news, the Red Sox are just 3 games behind them. At number 7, the Philadelphia Phillies. Andrew Painter's 7-inning gem, another big step forward for the rookie. At number 8, San Diego Padres. Remember when Fernando Tatis Jr. couldn't hit a home run? His 12 since the All-Star break, tied with PCA for most in the majors. Number 9, the Boston Red Sox, finally over 500 at Fenway Park. At number 10, Chicago White Sox. Have they found something in Jose Urquidy? At number 11, Arizona Diamondbacks. Can Ketel Marte ruin a season? We might find out these next few weeks. At number 12, the Miami Marlins. 8-1 record versus the Nationals are actually keeping them in playoff contention. At 13, the St. Louis Cardinals. Andre Palente to the injured list. Hunter Dobbins to the IL. They're chugging towards September. At 14, the Houston Astros. Getting punked by the A's at home isn't exactly a good sign. At 15, Texas Rangers starting pitchers haven't given up more than 3 runs in 13 straight games. At 16, the Cleveland Guardians. Remaining opponents have a .463 winning percentage. Can they take advantage of that? 17, the Toronto Blue Jays finally lose a series, but Vladdy Jr. is back, and 6, with Royals Mariners ends the brutal stretch. At 18, the Minnesota Twins, well, they don't have to play the Padres ever again. At 19, the Baltimore Orioles, Pete Alonso might crack 40 homer mark for the first time since 2023. At 20, the Pittsburgh Pirates, 13-22 since the All-Star break after the Dodgers sweep them. At 21, the Cincinnati Reds. At 22, the Detroit Tigers. At 23, Seattle Mariners. At 24, the Washington Nationals. 25, the New York Mets. 26, the Kansas City Royals. At 27, San Francisco Giants. At 28, the Colorado Rockies. And at 29, the Los Angeles Angels. And finally, at 30, the Athletics. They return to Yolo County after losing 5 of 7 on their road trip. The Astros and their general manager part ways. Dana Brown is out as general manager of the Houston Astros. Brown, who has held the position for just over 3.5 years, was coming to the end of his contract at the conclusion of the season, but he and the team announced August 24th that they have mutually agreed to part ways. Over the past 4 seasons, Dana has helped our organization win 2 division titles and has led our baseball front office through key scouting, draft, and development efforts, team owner Jim Crane said in a statement. On behalf of the Astros, I want to thank him for his commitment, his energy, and contributions to our organization. The team, said Crane, will oversee baseball operations as assistant GMs Charles Cook, Gavin Dickey, and Connor Huff, and senior advisor Jeff Bagwell takes over Crane's duties. The move comes with the Astros tied for first place in the American League West Division, but with a sub-500 record of 65-66 at the start of the week. That's also despite an MVP caliber season from designated hitter Jordan Alvarez, who leads the league in all 3 Triple Crown hitting categories with a .320 average, 36 home runs, and 90 RBIs. Enes Kanter freedom stunt ends in ejection. Former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom got into a shouting match with Chicago Sky guard Natasha Cloud in the waning minutes of the third quarter and was subsequently ejected from a game against the Indiana Fever in Chicago on August 23rd. Kanter Friedman has been outspoken about the trans athlete debate surrounding the WNBA, declaring himself eligible for the 2027 league draft on social media on August 7th, saying that he identifies as a woman. He was sitting courtside at the Wintrust Arena in a t-shirt that said, "Woman Noun, Adult Human Female." Since the league's inception, the collective bargaining agreement has said only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. No further definition of a woman is given. The WNBA has no publicly available policy governing eligibility of transgender or intersex athletes. Cloud approached Kanter Freedom when a timeout was called with 1:22 to go in the third quarter. He stood up, arms outstretched, and approached the court. Cloud was held back by teammates, and Kanter Friedman was surrounded by security. He was eventually escorted out. Cloud finished the contest and had a team-high 16 points and 7 assists in the Sky's 113-90 loss to the Fever. She voiced her frustration with sex toys being thrown onto the court after Friday's game, another product of the controversy surrounding trans athletes. Cloud posted this message on social media post-game. To every trans kid/person, you are a part of my community and tribe. You belong. You're loved. You're seen. You're perfect as you are, and you'll always be protected by me. Sky coach Tyler Marsh said he respected Cloud standing up for her beliefs. Tosh didn't want to feel like she was a distraction, Marsh said post-game. I told her she wasn't, that we all embrace her as someone that protects our team and protects people that need to be protected. Tosh is always going to stand on that, and we stand with Tosh. As for Cantor Friedman attending the game with what seemed to be an ulterior motive, Marsh said, "If you come to a game, you should probably come to enjoy the basketball. That seems pretty simple to me. I think these players deserve that, and I've earned that. Being a former basketball player, you should probably understand and feel that too." The WNBA and Sky did not immediately respond to USA Today's sports request for a comment. IndyCar Series. Kirkwood propels Andretti Global mojo. Kyle Kirkwood's heart was racing when he woke up on August 23rd before the IndyCar Series Freedom 250 Grand Prix. Kirkwood knew he was starting on the front row in a race that had over 100,000 spectators in attendance for the one-time race that many drivers ranked second to the Indianapolis 500. After Kirkwood snatched the lead from Alex Palou on the race's opening lap and led most of the way, he had to reset mentally after 100 laps in. The pressure of this raid made the Andretti Global driver regain focus to not make a mistake that would cost him the lead. "I just told myself to reset," Kirkwood said. "Even in the last few laps, once it got to the last lap, I could let myself breathe a little bit, soak it in a little bit, because we had about a 4.5-second lead. Kind of chilled out in that lap." In IndyCar's last raid in Markham, Ontario, Kirkwood had a lap in focus that cost him. While running in the top 5 and having a chance to win, Kirkwood brushed the inside wall of turn number 3 in Markham, causing his number 27 Honda to ricochet off the outside wall, which ended his day. The 27-year-old said, "After last weekend, I was very sure I was not going to let myself do that once again," as he maintained focus for the 147-lap, 250-mile race on the National Mall in Washington. The victory was Kirkwood's second of the year after he outdueled Poulo in the Grand Prix of Arlington, another new street course, in March. With Marcus Ericsson winning in Markham on August 16th, Andretti Global swept IndyCar's 3 new street course races in 2026. Andretti Global is in its first year of the driver trio of Kirkwood, Ericsson, and Power. The team will bring home these 3 back in 2027 after Ericsson signed a contract extension this month. With drivers who frequently bounce information off each other, Andretti Global has adapted to new street circuits better than anyone else this year, with the team claiming first and third in each race. On Sunday, Power finished third and Ericsson finished fourth. These inaugural events this year, I think it's really shown the strength of the team, how they all bound together and really took it in. Team principal Ron Rzuski said, "The drivers, really instrumental for the drivers to work together and try things, spread that information amongst each other in the sessions." Kirkwood, who got his 7th win and 6th on a street course, credited the team's crew of engineers for what it accomplished on street courses this year. "Quite honestly, they've given us the tools that every single weekend to go fast," Kirkwood said. "Those efforts, that growth that we've seen everywhere else, is showing exponentially on these circuits that are brand new because we're putting in that much more effort than maybe some of the others are." Andretti Global brought in Power and Rzuski, who both spent over a decade and a half with Team Penske before departing the team in 2025, with the aim of catching up to Team Penske and Chip Ganassi Racing, the 2 teams that have dominated IndyCar since it merged with Champ Car in 2008. CGR and Palou maintain a 91-point lead. A race win is worth 50 points, by the way, in the championship over Kirkwood with 3 races to go. Kirkwood and the team have acknowledged in recent weeks that a comeback is unlikely, with Kirkwood saying that it had taken an immense amount of misfortune for Palou to not win the title after Palou won the Grand Prix of Portland on August 9th. Although Palou experienced some of that misfortune Sunday, Andretti Global is focused on the gains that it has made on the 4-time championship this season and is looking forward to what it thinks will be a close championship bout in 2027. "Teams made huge progression over this season, and you can see it now," Power said. "It's all coming. I think the expectation now every weekend is to be on the podium, challenge for a win. I think next year we'll be wanting to be all top 5 in the championship-type stuff." Said Ericsson, "I feel like we're building a lot of momentum in the Andretti camp. We're really getting stronger and stronger. The fact that we're keeping this lineup in the next year were going to be really, really tough to beat next year. So I'm excited about that. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. And now we'll turn to the life section of USA Today. Kennedy calls out Boeing in a new film. With a nervous laugh, Rory Kennedy concedes that she's terrified of flying. I have a long history of grabbing the person next to me when it gets bumpy or turbulent, she tells USA Today. I have a lot of anxiety with flying, and now I have a lot more. This certainly doesn't come as a surprise to those who know the Kennedy family's history and how several family members have tragically died in plane crashes. The parents of her mother, Ethel Kennedy, George's Ann Skakel, died in 1955 after their plane crashed close to Union City, Oklahoma. Ethel's brother, George Skakel Jr., died in an aviation accident in 1966. Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., the eldest brother of Rory Kennedy's father, Robert F. Kennedy, was killed in 1944 when the naval aviator's plane exploded, and a plane carrying his sister, Kathy Kennedy, crashed in 1948. And John F. Kennedy Jr., Carolyn Bessette, and her sister, Lauren Bessette, died in 1999 on their way to Rory Kennedy's wedding. Yet that's not why Kennedy, who's 57 years old, devoted years of her life to investigating Boeing's underbelly, portrayed in a pair of documentaries as a money-hungry entity willing to cut costs and corners even when lives are at stake. Freefall, A Reckoning for Boeing, which is now streaming on Netflix, follows Kennedy's 2022 film Downfall, The Case Against Boeing, also on the platform, which examined the 737 MAX 8 crashes in 2018 and 2019 that resulted in 346 deaths. Boeing has admitted fault in these tragedies, attributing the cause of the crashes to a faulty maneuvering characteristics augmentation system, also known as MCAS. Freefall claims that there was a pattern of the company ignoring employees' concerns and retaliating against whistleblowers. Kennedy also heard reports of corroded parts being on the production line, but what shocked her most, she says, was a continued lack of humanity. It's not just for the whistleblowers, but also the families who lost family members in the 737 MAX crashes, Kennedy says. In hearing from loved ones, you really see how these decisions and policies trickle down to impact people's lives in such profound ways and create such a sense of loss and just abject sadness. That stays with me, and I think that really drives me more than anything to make the film. In a statement to USA Today, a spokesperson for Boeing addressed the claims made in Kennedy's latest documentary. The allegations in this film have been widely reported over the past several years. Some remain unfounded claims to this day, while others are issues that Boeing thoroughly addressed or continues to improve upon under the rigorous oversight of our regulators. Today, we are grateful that customers, industry experts, policymakers, and our employees are seeing improvements in how we work together and deliver quality products. Our team is working every day to meet our commitments and earn the trust of those who depend on us. Below, Kennedy reveals her motivation to continue her Boeing probe, what it was like investigating the death of whistleblower John Barnett, and how her upbringing influenced her desire to make documentaries. Question: at what point did you think that there needed to be a second film? Answer: in the aftermath of the two 737 MAX 8 crashes, Boeing did take responsibility for the MCAS in those planes, which was really the reason for those planes crashing. They also had indicated to the public and to government that they had changed their ways, that they had learned their lessons, and that they were no longer going to prioritize profits over people and safety. And they seemed to make some significant changes that were reassuring while they were fixing the 737 MAX. But pretty soon after that plane went up into the air, after being ungrounded by the FAA and the government scrutiny stopped and the regulations pulled back on them, they reverted right back to their old ways. It seemed, I would say the compelling thing that really made me feel like I got to get back in there was John Barnett, who I had known as a whistleblower from Downfall, was being deposed about what he had seen at Boeing, and during that period he died under very suspicious circumstances. What was it like investigating the death of John Bardette? It was concerning. I do feel like the toll that the experience of being a whistleblower had on John emotionally was really concerning, and he would talk about it. He was in therapy. He was working through a lot of issues. He was having anxiety. He was under an enormous amount of stress, and this had been going on for years and years. Boeing made it as difficult as they could for him to finish his deposition, making his case for a retaliation lawsuit. And as I learned the circumstances and was able to watch footage from that deposition, and learning that he had asked Boeing during the deposition, can I just take a break from this for a beat? And they said, no, you have to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then he died. I just felt like there was such a lack of humanity on a very personal level, which I think people will see when they watch the film. What role do you think the government should have played in holding Boeing accountable? I think that there should have been criminal charges against them. In fact, Boeing had agreed to plead guilty, and then more recently, under the current administration, they, the Trump administration, withdrew the case and the necessity for Boeing to plead guilty for criminal charges. Different administrations handled it differently, so that's a reality. But of course, I don't think this is a partisan issue. I do feel like having criminal charges against the CEOs who knew what they were doing when they let those planes go up in the air and where they allowed for 346 people to die, and if they had to go to jail and prison as a result, then that would send a very clear message, not only to Boeing CEOs, but to CEOs from other companies, that they can be held criminally responsible and that it would compel them pretty immediately to make smarter choices about safety and the public interest. Do you feel that your own life experiences have made you a more steadfast filmmaker? I think that I have personally experienced a lot of loss and sadness in my life, and I do think it creates a sense of connection and understanding to people who have gone through pretty traumatic suffering. After hearing your cousin, Maria Shriver, speak, it seems that there was an expectation of the Kennedy family that you would go out and do good in the world. Do you feel like that was modeled for you in your childhood? I don't feel that I was ever explicitly told by anybody in my family, you have to give back, you need to contribute to the world. I do think that that had a big influence on me of people who I was surrounded by, both family and members, and Maria's mother was a significant influence on me, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, and my mother, as well as my siblings and cousins, many of whom have led lives that have been enormously contributory, but also the people who were brought into our lives. Music, news, and views. The Jonas Brothers, Rebel in the Past on Burning Tour. It really is burning up all over again. The Jonas Brothers embarked on their Burning Up tour all over again, kicking off the slate of shows at Madison Square Garden on August 20th with a big surprise guest that brought the tour name to life with an encore performance of their hit song, Burning Up. The last time we were on this tour was in 2008. Nick Jonas, who's now 33 years old, said, I think some of you were there. The arena's filled with fans who rocked out to the Burning Up tour the first time in 2008, as well as fans experiencing the set list for the first time, decked out in Joe Bros merch, sequins, and more. We're a little bit older tonight, that's for sure, Joe Jonas, who's 37, said. After some travel delays getting to the rain-soaked arena, former bodyguard and unintentional icon in Jonas Brothers lore, Big Rob, hit the stage for his legendary verse on Burnin' Up as the Jonas Brothers performed the 2008 hit single for the second time to end the show. They weren't able to join us in the first act. They have arrived, they're in the building, and we will not let this night finish without doing this song the proper way here, Nick Jonas said of the surprise guest, Robert Big Rob Fergens, the one, the only, the fashionable late Big Rob. In the first performance of Burnin' Up, during the first half of the concert, Joe and Kevin Jonas, who are both 38, recreated their iconic drum moment from the original tour, banging on 4 drums with water splashing as they hit the beat with brother Nick rocking out on a drum kit next to them. We haven't been in the studio, we've been working on new music, and we have a brand new single coming out, Nick teased on stage of their song, Listen When Sad, which drops on August 28th. We've tapped back into the sound that was kind of the sound of the early 2000s, to be honest, and it was heavily inspired by bands like Switchfoot, Taking Back Sunday, Dashboard Confessional. We've restreamed with the producer self-titled item a little bit longer in Lines, Vines, and Trying Times, Nick said. The audience bopped their heads to the new song with its garage band guitar riffs and longing lyrics such as, do you remember the summer / she gave you her number / on the back of that CD that you bought last spring. The Jonah Brothers acknowledged that while they were bringing back many of the songs and elements from the 2008 tour, they're not teenagers anymore. It's been quite a while. 2008 was not yesterday. A lot of things have changed, and we did our very best to bring this show to life as best we could, Nick said, as Joe pointed to the Jonas Brothers sign that brought back out. We're not as young and flexible, Joe said, with Nick quipping, speak for yourself. They also shouted out Disney in the recent premiere of Camp Rock 3, nearly 20 years after starring alongside Demi Lovato in the original Camp Rock movie in 2008. Lovato's 34th birthday fell on the night of the show, for any fans who might have hoped that she would join the brothers on stage for This Is Me. On Sunday night out there in Los Angeles, we were honored and welcomed to the club as Disney legends. A pretty special night, Nick said. And when we think back to all those great projects we've been fortunate enough to do with Disney, we're brought back to a summer in 2007 where we found ourselves up in Toronto, Canada, filming a movie. We had no idea just how much our lives were about to change. The Jonas Brothers also joined forces for their solo hits. Nick serenaded the crowd with Jealous as Joe belted the second verse. Joe amped up the crowd with the NCE hit Cake by the Ocean, with Nick providing vocals, and Kevin got his moment in the spotlight with fans screaming for his new song, Changing, as both of his brothers sang along right beside him. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for August 25th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon, and for more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Jeff Shapiro.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 5 of A World Appears by Michael Pollan. Following that, at 3 o'clock is National Geographic, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.